Welcome back to Idioms for IELTS with me, Will, and today's topic is education. So let's go. Topic of education does come up a lot in IELTS as one of those topics which is quite common, like health and the environment, etc. So it's useful, especially in speaking, to try and come up with some natural sounding phrases and words which will get you higher marks. And that's what idioms can do. They can make you sound a little bit like a native speaker. So the education questions often ask you to describe your own study experiences. Even in part one, they ask you to talk about study. So even in part one of the speaking test, for example, the first question is usually about your hometown or what you're studying. So you could easily start the test with some good phrases and good idioms here as well. And you usually have to talk about the teachers, the students, or the school, or the education system in general. So let's look at some. And usually in parts one, two, or three, you have to talk about things like students, teachers, schools, universities, or education systems. And so idioms when speaking will be quite useful for that. So let's explore some of these idioms that may get you the better mark. First of all, just have a quick look at some of the ones that we will look at today. So first one, we've got to hit the books. That means to study hard. I can't go out tonight. I need to hit the books for my exams. To learn the ropes, that means to learn how to do something. So it took me a few weeks to learn the ropes at my new school. To pass with flying colors, to achieve something very successfully. So I studied really hard and passed the exam with flying colors. To draw a blank, that means to fail to remember or think of something. So sometimes you're in the test and you just cannot think and you don't see any answer or anything at all. That's called to draw a blank. So I was trying to answer the question, but I completely drew a blank. And finally, a steep learning curve. A lot to learn in a short time. So you don't have much time, a lot of information to take in, so that's called a steep learning curve. You have to learn fast. So starting university was a steep learning curve for me. Let's have a look at some of them in the speaking part two. Here's a speaking part two question. Describe a time when you learned something new. Very common question, this. Possibly part of an answer could look like this. When I started learning Spanish, it was a steep learning curve. At first, I drew a blank in conversations, but after a few months of hitting the books every evening, I improved a lot. So, this person, when they were learning Spanish, had to learn a lot in a short space of time. And at first, they couldn't think of how to say anything in conversations, but after a few months of studying really hard, they got better. So you could, if you wish, pause the video and think of one example. As I always say, part two is one big example that you have to describe in detail. So try to think of one example you could use to answer this question, and then try to think of the answer, but use two of the idioms in this video today. You could try that. Let's look at writing task two. Here's a possible question. Some people believe exams are the best way to assess students, while others think they are not effective. Okay, that's whether you think exams are actually useful and show the student's ability or knowledge, or are other things better? If you answered like this in speaking, it would not work. So an informal answer would be students who hit the books usually pass with flying colors. So students who work hard, they usually pass no problem. But that may be okay and get you marks for speaking. We don't want that for writing. So how could we say something in writing which is more academic and formal? All right, so students who prepare thoroughly often achieve excellent examination results. Very simple, actually. That is a translation of what the idiomatic answer was. Small challenge if you wish to do it. Choose one idiom from here or from today's lesson and rewrite it in a formal academic way. And we're going to do that. All right. As I said, we're going to take some speaking answers and then rewrite them to make them more formal. And again, as we've seen in previous videos, if our speaking answer says I, for example, well, we don't want to do this in writing. So we've got to think of other things to say or other ways to say it. Number one, I have to hit the books this weekend because my midterm exams are next week. So we can't say I, so we have to use hit the books. How do we make hit the books sound much more formal? When I joined the debate club, it took me a few weeks to learn the ropes. So we're going to, how do we say academically and formally? It took some time to learn the ropes. I was nervous before my driving test, but I passed with flying colors. So we want to change passed with flying colors, and we can't say I was nervous. So we have to write an academic formal sentence using these ideas and change it into good formal language. So if you wish to try, please pause the video now and I will show you possible answers here. Let's look at the possible answers. Number one, I intend to engage in intensive study this weekend in preparation for my midterm examinations. So they don't say exams, they say examinations. I have to hit the books. I intend to engage in intensive study, right? It required several weeks to become fully familiar with the procedures and expectations of the debate club. That sounds quite a good way of reformulating it. To become fully familiar with basically means to learn it all. Despite initial anxiety, I achieved an excellent result in my driving examination. Anxiety is a good word to replace nervousness with also. Let's look at two more. Number four, in the speaking test, I completely drew a blank when they asked me about art. What does that mean? Drew a blank? What does it mean? Can't think. Number five, studying abroad was a steep learning curve, but I learned so much about different cultures. So this time you have to rewrite it. Again, no informal words. General meaning perhaps is the same, but it has to be formal and academic because we're writing. During the oral examination, I was unable to recall relevant information on the topic of art. I was unable to recall. That's it. That means you knew it, but you just couldn't remember it. And number five, studying abroad required the rapid acquisition of new skills and cultural knowledge, which means it was a steep learning curve. The rapid acquisition of new skills and cultural knowledge. You had to learn really quickly. Here's a quick recap of the ones we've looked at in this video. Today's idioms. So to hit the books, not very good for writing, but very good for speaking. Learn the ropes, pass with flying colors, draw a blank, and a steep learning curve. Maybe you could use it in writing. Possibly it's slightly formal, you could imagine. If you like some homework or something to try at home, here we go. You could record yourself answering a part two question about learning something new using idioms. Can you speak it? That's the idea. Or you could rewrite this sentence for writing task two, which means formal language, academic tone. The first term at university was a steep learning curve for me. So at least you have to change the idiom to something much more formal. So that was the topic of education and the idioms we can use there. If you've enjoyed this lesson, you can click like below, subscribe, and look at the courses and the links below. And I'll see you next time when we're going to look at work. All right. See you then.